All right, great. All right, thank you. First, some organizational updates. The secretary role of 2022, now that we have a dedicated Borough Hall administrator to join us, Christy Larson is going to be the secretary for the Shade Tree Commission. We thank Chris Larson for his secretarial services. And I'm sure we'll find more stuff for Chris to do. We do need to elect a chairperson or re-elect a chairperson, whichever you guys may choose. I will open it up to nominations for the role of chair for 2022 year.
I nominate Dave Pohl.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you. Why don't we take that to a vote? All in favor of Dave Paolo being chair for 2022? Yeah, looks like anybody object? All right, that's it. Thank you very much, people. I appreciate the vote of confidence. I'd also like to nominate Mike D'Angelo as vice chair in case I can't make it. Do I have a second?
Second.
Excellent. All in favor? All opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Okay. Christy, was there anything else organizational that we needed to do at the start of this meeting?
No, just the nominations. And
Okay.
there's this, the organizational stuff such as the CEUs and stuff we have on the agenda, and we can just go over that when we get to it.
Okay, thank you very much. The prior meeting minutes, I did not have a chance to look them over. Did I see them come out? I'm sure they were sent. I just didn't see them. But okay, did anybody make a motion to approve the prior meeting minutes as long as people have reviewed it? Jill seconds it. All in favor of approving the meeting minutes? All opposed? No. Okay, no opposition there. Those meetings are approved. Minutes are approved. All right. And in the interest of time, we'll jump right into the project updates. Green Initiative, Sustainable Jersey Credit Opportunities for the Shade Tree Commission. Ms. Reed.
So I sent you, I'm not sure if you had a chance, Dave, the other night, I put together a summary. I sent it to your email. I put together a summary of, I think there were 6 different items, maybe 5, where the Shade Tree could potentially get involved. And I put a Word document together. There's links to Sustainable Jersey website so everyone can go through it. I also linked the Fairhaven specific prior certification, so you can look at that. And then I summarized the different ones. So there's one around tree hazard, tree maintenance. There's tree ordinance is another one. So I think there were 2 definitely that we have covered already. And Lalini's on the line. I think in the last certification, there were 2 that we addressed. Potentially, we just need to renew them. And I believe, I'll check my email. I think there were 3 new ones, which were not in the last certification. One is tree hazard inventory, tree maintenance program, tree planting program. Those are something we might want to work on. Dave, I don't know if you want me to share with everyone the document. I sent it to you directly, but I can share it to this group and then we could discuss it in more detail if you want for the next meeting.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind sharing it with the group, and we can keep it on the agenda for next meeting. Councilwoman Neff, anything you wanted to add?
No, just other than I think if I remember correctly, Andrea, remind me. I worked on that with Chris Rodriguez. We got 40 points. I think there were 2 actions. There's 2 things you had. One was the tree ordinance, and I forgot if the other one was the hazard tree.
The other one is the community forestry management plan and accreditation, and that was I think 20 points. So combined, it was either 30 or 40 points, which you had last time around.
It was very straightforward. You just send out essentially the paperwork that shows that you have the ordinance, and essentially demonstrate it's still effective. It's very straightforward. The other items, I had to also cover that with Chris Rodriguez at the time. He was the chair of the Shade Tree. And some of them, you had elements of it, but not all of it. But even if you focus on one thing, maybe that would be something that, could eventually count as points for Sustainable Jersey. But we are thankful we already get 40 points out of the 160 from you that we have for our certification. It comes from the Shade Tree.
And so what I think maybe next steps are, I'll check with Kelly Flanagan from the Green Team to see if she needs the updated versions of the two pieces that we can cover easily. Again, the ordinance and the accreditation. And then the other three, I think we should all just read about what the requirements are to see, and then we could brainstorm whether or not potentially we can tackle one. There was one, was the tree planting program. In the email I'll forward to everyone, I also pulled, Rumson does have a tree planting program fairly recent, and they had a documentation on the website around what they have, what covers, kind of what they did. That might be something that we might want to work towards as we're talking about some of these things about planting trees, you know, on Fairhaven Road or whatever, we can cover it there. So again, I'll share my document, feel free to look through it, and then next session, we could go through it in more detail.
Yeah, pay attention to the tree planting thing that Andrea just mentioned. I was kind of impressed by that, and I think it is something that we could pretty easily put together as a group. We would just need somebody to kind of own that project. But why don't everybody review what Andrea is going to send around, and we'll keep it on the agenda for next month.
I agree. I think that one, just given the recent conversations we've had about, you know, updating our shade tree ordinance to look to provide greater incentives towards planting trees, and even some of the stuff listed here on the cherry tree giveaway for Fairhaven Road and so on. I just really sounds to me that's the direction we're going this year. So maybe that's one good one to focus. I would be very happy to work with whoever might want to lead this, because that's something that I would be very excited working on. I think it's great if we can engage the community and talk to people about adding trees to their front yards.
Agreed.
Great. Yeah, instead, and I won't assign anybody that task just yet until we've all had a chance to review it, but I agree. I think that would be kind of low hanging fruit as we look to be a tree planting commission in 2022. Anything else from the Green Initiative?
I think that was the main thing for tonight in the interest of time.
Thank you, Andrea. Social media. Oh, you're on mute. Unmute.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. So we have 80 Instagram followers, and we've had some response. I'm trying to post on the Fairhaven group more frequently and sharing that. I have created some graphics, and those were approved by some fellow shade tree commissioners, and I'll be posting those. Our newest member, Kristen Hoey, is also happy to chip in and help me out with social media. So if we can get a little more engagement. And she had a great idea about doing some graphics that were more like geared towards kids, so that maybe we could get some more kid involvement, because I think it's a great idea.
That's great. And you know, I think in the past, we've had pretty good relationship with the schools, especially around things like Arbor Day. You know, COVID kind of interrupted a lot of that. So I think, yeah, a re-engagement of the Fairhaven youth would be a great idea. Kristen, thank you for volunteering to help Leah, and Leah, thank you for proactively organizing that.
One question, Leah, from your side, do you think it would help? I know it's overwhelming and a lot to constantly post and think of material. Do we want to consider like coming up with a theme? I know I brought it up a while ago, but like a theme per month. Like, I don't know, if it's the winter, let's focus on tree protection in winter months, just because otherwise it's kind of overwhelming in terms of just coming up with things.
Well, you know, I did this month. I did come up with graphics. It was environmental focus. I did have some tree facts in winter, and then the others were basically around carbon and how trees, where it's stored in the tree, where the carbon, like what happens to the carbon dioxide when a tree is cut down, which it's whatever's not actually in the wood is actually, it's like released out into the atmosphere again, which I didn't know. So yes, I agree on the themes, and I'm trying to do that.
Hopefully we can help you. So even if we talk about it on our monthly call and all agree on what it is, just so you don't have to, as one person, you know, come up with.
Yeah.
Like something that we want to highlight. I don't know, just a thought, because I know it's a lot for one person.
I would appreciate any content. So like if there's a tree fact or anything that you think is interesting, send it on over and I will make a graphic around it.
Thank you very much, Leah. Jill, how is the tree inventory project coming along?
Hi. Okay. Oh, better than last month. I actually have some some stuff to report. So with the list that was provided by Emily and Michael, I kind of have started going through their software, not recommendations, but you know, I guess you would just call it their list. And
They
added a
can't
few,
officially recommend anything, right?
Yeah,
It's-
then
kinda have
they
to be
will not, they're like very clear. not
brand
recommending
agnostic,
anything.
right? Okay.
But with that said, I've kind of taken a first pass at like 22 different software options and was able to just quickly eliminate only a few, unfortunately. I have a document that if you're interested, I'd be happy to share it with you, but it's really like just something to keep myself organized, but happy, like if anybody's interested, absolutely happy to share. It's a Google Doc. My next steps here are I want to try and get this list smaller because I can't ask for demos from 18 different companies. But in looking at these things, it appears that, I mean, will be of no surprise that the free options are very limited in what they could do. And actually, there's not that many out there. Some of the ones that were labeled as free are now not free. And so, I need to get some pricing and see what the different aspects are of each of those software options. What I had them thinking about as I was doing this is that a lot of the ones that are free really have said that they're for smaller projects. Maybe a park, like one park, or a golf course or something like that. And as I was thinking about Fairhaven, and I know that we want to dig into volunteers here, and I still think we should, but I want to think about maybe splitting this between two projects, like where there's a volunteer aspect in areas that it makes sense. Like, for example, it makes sense that volunteers can do McCarter Park, or can do streets, or could do the little park on Denormity, for example. It makes I think it makes no sense for us to think that we're going to get volunteers to go through the natural area of Fairhaven Fields. So maybe that's an opportunity that we could partner with the Environmental Commission or the Natural Tree Area, and maybe pull some resources together in order to actually hire somebody to do those more intensely concentrated areas where you'll need somebody with experience in actually walking through those areas and be able to like rope them out and do section by section, but also be able to make recommendations in those highly dense areas on which trees are healthy, which trees are, what to do about the vines, what to do about planting. Like, I just think that if we're going to do this, we should do it right. And that also brings me to the idea that there has to be grants out there where we could apply to actually have somebody help us with this inventory, and we would supplement with the, normally you have to put in so many man hours, or in terms of like to, balance it out. And we should be able to do that with our, with inventorying the rest of the town. So that's kind of where my head is at with this right now. I mean, it is a long way to go before we get there. But the good news is that with a lot of these software programs, I feel like this could be something that we could take beyond like just getting an inventory, but it could really help us in like tree management, risk management, and a planting plan, because that seems to be what the focus is, beyond what these software programs could do beyond just getting an inventory.
That's a great start, and I agree with you. Yeah, thank you for doing the legwork. It sounds like, and I saw the email. Yeah, I remember there was a lot of suggestions, or not suggestions, but
Right.
A list of software candidates, I guess you could say.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Jill,
Thank you for checking that out. I do think, yeah, like a scalable version, something that could grow with our initiatives is probably best case scenario. And I love the idea of looking at a grant to pay for it all. Yeah, we'll keep it on the agenda, and any further updates next month. This is all great work. I know it, and this is kind of like a daunting big one. So I appreciate you kind of.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I don't mind taking it on. I think, and really, I'm clueless on what this even means in terms of costs. Like, it could come back and it could be, $100,000. I have no idea, but but it could be something where it's not, and it could be something that maybe by partnering with others and maybe even getting the town involved, it becomes part of the budget. I have no idea. So more to come, but that's where we are right now.
Excellent.
If I may just ask a couple questions. I guess I'll just mention in terms of funding, you might really want to work with the green team to see if we can get funding from Sustainable Jersey. That sounds like a great project for us to apply for funding, and
Right.
they're a compelling project that we would likely get some money. So I would definitely put that on the list of the green team.
You're on my list.
There is a link on the website for Sustainable Jersey. When I went through it, under tree hazard inventory, it says one of the kind of the nice to haves is a tree inventory in general for your town. And there's a link to apply for grants there. So it was actually on my to-dos to research that. But as I send you the information, we can look at it, and there's a specific name of the grant and what the requirements are. So maybe that's a starting point in terms of figuring out if we could be potentially eligible to submit.
Yeah, do you have any experience writing grants?
I don't, but the green team, the green team has somebody who's doing it.
Okay.
There's one person actually in the green team who specializes in writing grants for a living.
Oh,
So
great.
they would be a great resource. The second thing I would mention is that if you don't mind sharing the list, I'd love to see it. I'm actually graduating with a master's degree that includes a geographic information systems certificate. And I actually have just done a 3D map of the trees and the homes by McCarter Pond as a project. So I'm familiar with some, like with ArcGIS and QGIS. I don't know what you are looking into in terms of software, but I'm wondering, like, what are we looking for? We could talk about, are you looking for 3D views as well, or just an inventory? Because some of it will provide you a 3D view of the structures and the trees, and you can see how tall the trees are relative to the homes, depending on how tall the homes are. And you can actually, turn around and see in many different ways from a bird's eye view and move around the whole section on the map to understand how the trees relate to the structures around it. So I'm not sure exactly what we want, and maybe that's part of the answer for you in terms of this deciding on what software you want. So
Yeah, that was definitely part of some of the packages. Like I said, I mean, this was the first glance as I went through, but that was definitely mentioned in quite a few, is the ArcGIS, so which I'm not really familiar with, but
I actually know how to do it, and I use Collector, which is a way that you would literally walk with a cell phone, and you plug in your location, and you just type in what kind of tree it is, the height, the weight. You can build everything you want, and you show up at home and it all pops up. It's pretty cool. So
yeah, no, some of it seems very cool. I think like one of the big key things that I want to talk and look for is something where the software could aid a novice in identifying a tree. Because if we have all these volunteers, they're not tree specialists. Like, so we need the software to help us do that. I think that's like a key component that we should be looking for. But I'm happy to share that document with you if you want to poke around.
I'm very interested, and if you wish, I can show you what I built for McCarter Pond. You can see it, so you know what ArcGIS looks like on a 3D. But
Sure.
Also, maybe it's worth that we follow up with a couple of people who might be interested in helping, because maybe we can figure out what we are looking for. But I'll be really happy to help you. At least figure out that first step. And I think I mentioned before, I have a couple of volunteers at home who would like to probably work on on documenting some of the trees for you.
Great. All right. I'll share that.
Thank you for collaborating on that, guys. Look forward to the update next time. Okay, moving along. Administrative. Actually, I'm sorry. Did anybody have any questions on tree inventory, or are we clear on next steps there? Great. Administrative. This is where we talk about like our annual accreditation. And I know that Christie's on top of the things that we need to do. It's on me to kind of get those forms completed, and I commit to doing that in the next couple of weeks. I know it's due Feb 15th, but I do believe that. Well, I know that we got our CEU credit all done by the end of the year, and the rest of it is just kind of paperwork, I believe. So anything else I should be thinking about there, Christy, before I kind of dive into those two things? I think it's two things we have to do. One for New Jersey Community Forestry, and one for Tree City USA.
That's correct. Both in February. Yep.
Yep. Okay. All right. I'll follow
So
up
you
with
and
you.
I, yeah, follow up with me. I'm happy to help.
Okay. Thank you. Plaque at the Normandy Park. Andrea, any changes there?
I have not followed up on that.
Oh, you know why we're waiting for either the heritage or the signature classification
We
change,
said we
right?
were gonna wait on that, but I just didn't know, and I don't know, Christy, if you sent through or not, who I go to actually start this. So I think we're gonna go forward and just put it as a signature tree for now, because it's not worth waiting. I just wasn't sure on who I reach out to for the plaque.
I sent you, I think there were 2 vendors that the borough typically uses for plaques, at least in the past, whether they're at Bicentennial Hall or, whatever. And
Okay.
I can resend those, and if you want to research and figure out pricing and
Yep.
fonts and whatever you
I'll
want to
take that
say.
away then. Mhm.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks. Kwanzaa cherry tree giveaway on Fairhaven Road. I was very impressed with Peter's feasibility plan last month. Any follow up there, Peter?
Not at this point. I think the next thing on my list was to try to get some pricing to try to just estimate how much it would cost to do 40 trees. I have not done that, but it's on my list.
Okay. And I know that there's momentum there. Councilwoman Neff was very interested in it, and since she's lives right there, would be a great place to start. Is her property. So.
Possibly, and also right next to me, there are 2 new homes going up. So I thought maybe it doesn't hurt to ask the builder if they would like to put 2 or 3 trees that I could see right here on those, in front of those 2 new homes. So one thing we might want to consider is whether we want to start knocking on some doors in the spring, early spring, which is a good time to start planting. I don't know if it's too soon, but I do think there might be some opportunities right here next door. So I would just suggest, Peter, if you want to talk about it, I'm welcome to talk to you separately about it. I'm personally very, very excited about the project. I really think that it will improve the views of the street, and honestly, from a homeowner's perspective, it increases property values as well. And I think people might be really excited about that. The only thing I would mention, David, that I have been thinking, and I guess we haven't mentioned that here, but that was an idea to possibly replace the existing cherry trees a third at a time at by the fields. And I wonder whether we should set that aside for a few years in exchange of instead planting more trees, because it seems to me that we might hit a very high price tag for doing both. And if we want to put the money somewhere, the more I think about it, and that's my personal view, but the shade tree can do whatever it wishes to suggest. My personal view is that maybe we should focus on new tree plantings instead, and then set aside that idea of replacing the cherry trees for a little bit further down the road. That's just my opinion.
No, that's fair. I think I think with that particular project, I think, and this is also kind of on my plate, is I wanted to put forth kind of an opinion paper from the Shade Tree Commission to the council and just kind of get it on the record, say like, look, these are a couple of ways that we have heard those Kwanzaa cherry trees can be replaced. There's the do nothing plan all the way up to the full replacement plan, and there's a couple different variations in between. It's just kind of on me to write that up and get it into council, only because I think we are going to be faced with some dying trees there in the next decade or so. And I just feel like it's something to think about, proactively or before it becomes a problem. So not that it's a problem, but I do think that we could extend life with those trees, I think, if we did a little trimming in the natural area. And so there's a lot of different kind of local boards and commissions that might straddle this project. So and that's often how you really slow things down around here. A couple different boards.
It's a good heads up for the council. I think it's worthwhile raising the issue at the council level as an awareness issue that, hey, we may have to tackle this at some point, and it's good planning for us to know that this is something that we need to get to. So I think that's one way to approach it. But then, on a more immediate basis, let's say this year, maybe we want to focus on planting some new trees.
That's fine.
That might be what you want, the way you want to approach it, but at least it allows the council to plan over a certain period of time, because I think that's going to be expensive, at least from what I've heard from others. Could be quite pricey to do that replanting.
Yeah, and I think there's decisions that would still need to be made, whether you want to stick with Quonset cherry trees, pivot to another more native. But again, the argument is that those Quonsets really have thrived there. So why pivot if they're thriving? But their argument for a native species is also valid as well. So it's so some questions that need to be answered there. So yeah, I'm happy to table that one and just kind of put the opinion paper into council and see if anybody kind of bites at the project. So great, thank you.
The other thought there with the plantings first would be to test the concept and prove that new saplings would grow, right? And therefore people would be more comfortable cutting down the old beautiful trees that are there to replace them. So I don't know, because there was some discussion about, would new trees thrive there, et cetera, et cetera. So that was just another thought was, if we started planting a few trees nearby, we could point to something that and say, hey, they're going to look like these in a few years if you plant them, if you replace these, the old ones. So just another thought.
No, fair point. Thank you. Yeah, it gives us kind of like a test case, right? Say like, hey, this would work and this is what it would look like.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. The other 800-pound gorilla, Dr. Mike, tree ordinance updates.
And we've been following this for a couple months. As you know, it's a big issue and I still think it's gaining traction. Dave and I met with several members of a workshop, including Laline, Betsy Koch, and Todd Leader and Christy last night. And we just kind of workshopped both tree ordinances, the Fairhaven one and the Rumson one, what we liked about the Fairhaven one, what we wanted to remove about or what we want to discuss further or expound on in the Fairhaven tree ordinance, and also leaning on the Rumson ordinance for some guidance to create a new revision for our ordinance. The hot issues obviously are application fees. I think it's pretty much decided that we like to increase the application fees for tree removal, an appropriate mitigation plan, which means that once a tree is removed, what do we do to replace it? And then also penalties and enforcement for those trees that are removed without a permit. Anything else that I was missing, Dave?
No, that's a good summary. It's this conversation has a lot of momentum. The mayor also joined us.
The mayor was there. How could I forget the mayor?
So there's and there's a lot of really good input coming from all the different people involved. So it's kind of like, stay tuned, watch the space. I think within the next couple of months we could have a tree ordinance proposed, workshopped and approved at the council level. So and I think a lot of people in town will be happy with some of the details that we're going to be adding that will A, protect our tree resource, and B, kind of disincentivize any sort of malfeasance around cutting down trees if they don't need to be cut down. So I hope it's going to satisfy all the voices, but it's certainly going to be a good start and something we can iterate on in years to come. So and I really do want to thank Mike for taking this on, because there's a lot a lot of input and a lot of voices and a lot of follow-up. And Mike, thank you for diving into this one.
That's my pleasure. And so our immediate next steps are for Dave and I to meet with hopefully Bill Brooks in person and to bullet point what our main focus of the new ordinance is. And actually, it was kind of asked by us or tasked to us to get very granular and with our recommendations so that this can be officially written by the town lawyer and then presented before the board. But obviously, before we do that, we'd like to present to you the bullet points once we have them available so that we could discuss as a commission and then offer and hopefully able to edit and offer and keep it open to your insight, everybody here. So we do appreciate your input going forward.
Yeah, Dave, Mike, and Bill to meet. Sorry, just jotting this down.
You guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, just out of curiosity, has there been any pushback in terms of like?
Kristen, you keep cutting in and out there. I don't know, maybe something maybe just.
Has there been any opposition to the ordinance, like any negative feedback or pushback that you received?
Oh, meaning like, should we do nothing and just keep it as is? No, everybody seems to agree that there needs to be more detail added. And, you know, the answer isn't just port Rumson's over to ours, but Rumson's got a pretty good blueprint for a more detailed tree ordinance. So yeah, no, Mike, you wouldn't say there's been any pushback to this, would you?
No, and everybody's citing specific examples here in town, especially, I guess, recently the 3rd Street issue where there were multiple trees that were cut down, you know, multiple trees growing on the property. I think what Todd had said, almost 100 trees were cut. So yeah, we're getting a lot of enthusiasm from everybody in town, all the residents of town to change this ordinance.
Great.
I think another point is that we're trying to do this in conversations with people involved in zoning and planning. That's why Todd Leader was there. And the land use committee is being used as the vehicle to get people talking from all sides so that we hopefully can look at this in a more integrated way, because zoning has a lot to do with the trees coming down. And it's important that we address that. And we mentioned 3rd Street. What do we do, for example, about diseased trees? If there are so many diseased trees going down and our ordinance does not specify that even if they're diseased, they do need to be replaced, for example, then those are some of the issues we're trying to tackle and understand. So you're probably gonna see some of that in the bullet points when they are produced, that we try to insert some things in the ordinance that hopefully will make it, you know, stronger, and we encourage a canopy to be rebuilt.
Great. Maybe that's something we could add to social media.
Yes, I mean, once it gets to the point that we have a recommendation and it's close to, you know, a draft that will be shared with the council, we will need to advertise this very heavily to make sure that once it, you know, it has the forum that is necessary at the time that that it's looked at the council level, that will be an opportunity for public comment. And we need to make sure that people don't feel that this came out of nowhere and that they're fully aware and able to comment. And we're also able to communicate why the changes are important, such as, for example, if we have 100 disease trees, they should still be replaced, and so on. So we need to be able to design a communication plan around that. And I think the shade tree would be very important in helping us do that.
Along those lines, I'd just like to offer a food for thought as you're constructing the elements of what this new ordinance might look like. What Lainey was just talking about, that massive loss of trees on that subdivision. You know, obviously they can't replant those trees in that location, but we could develop something called a tree bank, which would essentially let a builder, for example, who might have been given permission to remove a lot of trees, he can or she can bank that investment in a separate account that would then be administered by this group to plant and install trees wherever it's deemed to be a priority. It's a similar mechanism that's used for parking. If a builder cannot provide the parking that's required on a specific site, they can bank you can word the legislation so you can bank that investment, and the town then has the ability to use those funds to create the parking where it's needed collectively. But it's an idea that would kind of give this body some, that has the intelligence and the big picture in mind to make those important decisions about where to put the trees. And I hope you are thinking about natives. I imagine you probably are.
Yeah.
We are,
That's
and
a-
actually, as we're talking about, that's a great idea. Like in the cherry tree project actually comes to mind. Like, you know, there probably shouldn't have been 100 overgrown trees on that 3rd Street lot, but there were, but many of them were diseased and dying. But you know, the new look is going to be, yeah, you know, for every tree that comes down, you're going to need to justify it, and you know, you're going to have to replace. And the zoning board is going to approve applications for any deviation from that. And then the idea of maybe banking, you know, if the whole kind of concept of right tree, right place dictates that maybe 30 trees should realistically be on a lot that's been subdivided, but where do you put the other 70? Maybe 70 cherry trees appear in Fairhaven Road over the next year. So that's a great idea. The idea of banking it. I think one of the big things that's interesting is that you can't make a distinction legally. This is what our legal guidance has been given, is that you can't make a distinction between a homeowner and a builder. So we have to be delicate about the way that it's worded, and you know, you do have to treat both type of owners fairly. So maybe the answer is more about, you know, what the project is as opposed to who the owner is. So, but yeah, lots to kind of get through on this one. And like I said, Mike's been doing a really good job at kind of synthesizing a couple different ordinances and putting into one. So more to come on this one.
That has definitely been part of our discussions. Thank you for mentioning that, Councilwoman Cole. That is definitely on the list of the things we talked about. And you know, it's either you replant it elsewhere if you cannot put it on your property, or you have to bank it the way you're calling it bank it. I think we say pay a fee so that a new tree can be replanted. And one of the issues is we think it should be, you know, at the realistic value of how much it would actually cost to replace. Because if you charge too little, you're actually not able to replace it. You're not able to fund the replacement. So one of the things we're looking at is how much does it actually cost? So that we make sure that we are charging the appropriate fee, and the Shade Tree Commission will have the funds to replace somewhere else in town. So that's a very valid point.
Is there anything about
Drip line?
I'm sorry?
Drip line?
Drip line, no. Anyone who is doing construction or new builds having to protect the trees that they do have. Is that in there at all?
That's yes. That's the drip line that Dave was alluding to.
That's okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about like a.
So it's actually in the Fairhaven ordinance and in the Rumson ordinance that a drip line be placed around the canopy of the tree during construction.
Okay.
That is in both ordinances, where, you know, I know that, you know, there have been situations where big equipment has been up against trees and or root systems, which can cause potential damage. So yes, that is a requirement in both ordinances to have a drip line around each tree that could be affected by the construction around it.
So it's not nearly enforced though. So
no, and that's a big issue, and this is something that we'll have to, you know, encounter going forward, is enforcement. Because we can put it in the ordinances, but enforcement and actually extracting fees or extracting penalties and enforcing violations is going to be a big deal. And we're really going to have to rely on other people in town to do that.
Is there a way, if we're seeing it as we're walking around the streets, because I'm sure we all see it all the time, that we can come to, I don't know, the council or a committee and just say, look, by the way, this construction is going on, and just to highlight it as like a concerned resident as a starting point?
I think that would be something that Borough Hall might receive and then filter to the appropriate, you know.
We do get a lot of those calls very frequently.
Christy, what's the just talking through, what's the process? Like if you get a call from somebody who's concerned about a specific construction site, what does it go to the construction official? Does it go to the tree expert, or what's next?
We look at all the paperwork that was filed for that property to make sure they actually indeed had a permit and what was permitted on that permit, and And if it was, somebody calls, oh, I see these trees going down, and we look like, yep, it was approved on this date, we let them know. If it's not, then the recourse goes through the central office, and they speak with zoning as well, if it was a new project.
Thank you.
Why don't I'm going to offer to work with Christy to understand exactly what that chain of enforcement is at this moment, to see if there's interest in tweaking or perhaps strengthening that communication chain so that it can trigger action where or when it may be needed. But Chris, if that sounds like a good idea to you, Dave, I'll reach out to Christy and follow back up in that. And then Lelania, I know you and I are going to be meeting. Then I'll try to have that information ready for us by the time we get together.
Yes, that enforcement item is quite important, and I think right now there are problems with it, and there are problems with what do you do if the tree was taken down? What are the next steps? So yeah, very important for us to understand the process, and the tree ordinance again will be addressing enforcement in a way that hopefully will create disincentives, stronger disincentives for anyone to take a tree down without permission.
And, Tracy, to your point, strengthening the chain of communication is always a good thing in this. So enforcement being kind of the latter stages of it, but yeah, let's look at the initial stages of it too. So good idea. So yeah, please do feel free to coordinate with Christy on that.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments on the tree ordinance from the Shade Tree Commission?
One small, if I may, there's some basic best practices language around a construction site where they may be equipment that couldn't be near or encroach on that drip line. Realistically, it does happen. And there's some basic language around best practices and ways to mitigate potential damage or even death of a tree because of that heavy equipment. It may be in some of the sample ordinances, but I am expecting some information that I was researching. If I can come across it, I'll share it with you. But that would help to further express, even if you have to encroach in the drip line, then do it this way. And then that's a very specific thing that the construction office can inspect and look for.
Yeah, I think the point was made last night was like the more specific we can make the tree ordinance, the better prepared we'll be to enforce it, right? Because if there's nothing, subjective about the drip line and the requirements of protecting the tree canopy, or at least the drip line, or to the canopy, then we'll be better able to enforce it, whoever that will be, whoever the enforcer is. So. Yeah, no, any information you can find that has specifics, please do filter it to Mike. I think that this is a fluid project, but a lot of momentum and a lot of support. So all input is welcome. Anybody else on the tree ordinance? And if to the public, we'll open up to public after all the agenda items, and I'm sure you'll have some feedback for us as well. So again, thanks, Mike, for diving into this one. I've not heard anything further on 3rd and the Sportsman Field East tree line. I guess I can follow up with the school to see if they have any interest in collaborating. So I'll follow up on that. Fairhaven Field Natural Area Firewood Project. Mr. McCabe, thank you for joining us.
I don't have anything yet for that. I'm still gathering who I should talk to and how to kind of approach it. So I had talked to DPW and the other committees and just try to get an idea and plan and go from there. So.
Okay. Everybody here likes firewood. I do. Okay. Thank you. We'll leave it on the agenda for next week. 2022 big tree hunt. This does come up from time to time. We have a lot of momentum in town with big tree hunters in the form of some of the local garden club folks and the green team as well. And I think that the last year, I looked again today, there is no official date scheduled for the 2022 big tree hunt, but last year's was May 1st. And I actually think it had been, was it April 1st and then it was moved to
Was
May
in
1st, or May 1st moved to
March or
June
April.
1st?
Mhm.
What's, sorry, Andrew?
It was originally in March, I believe, or maybe early April, and then it got moved. Yep.
Yeah, so then in that case, I think it was April 1st and then moved to May 1st because they just didn't get enough marketing momentum for the first month. And so anyway, we have in town a lot of very interested volunteers going around and suggesting to New Jersey Forestry that they document these, these specimen trees. And there's actually, not that I'm surprised, but there's a lot of appetite from the state to come document these things. And, we have a lot of great trees here in town. And, I'm sure there'll be a lot more to come. And I think this would be a good social media project that we get ahead of. And, this is something that we can get the kids involved in, and it just, everybody drives around and sees like a massive tree on somebody else's property, and you could, just knock on a homeowner's door and say, big tree hunt candidate here, but anyway, that's the update. I don't know the date, but when we do, we will certainly have a social media campaign for that, and see what kind of momentum we can keep this year.
Dave, I'd be happy to help with that, if at all useful.
Also,
Great.
from a social media perspective, something to think about. And I know Bonnie Torcivia seems to be on the phone. And she's one of the people going out there and recording some of these trees. She shared with a couple of us what I think a town called Medicine does, that they actually have a pamphlet with pictures of their largest trees, where it's located, and talk about why they're important. And maybe that's something that she can talk about when you open for public comments. But I just thought I would mention here, because if we want to do something on social media about that might be something we want to think about potentially considering, as we seem to be in the process of documenting some of our largest trees.
That's a great idea. Yeah, I saw that thing from Madison. Kristen, yeah, right. Make a mental note on this one. I thank you for volunteering. I do think this actually fits well into your efforts to help on the social media side of things. There also could be a nice dovetail into the website. I have always felt that the Shade Tree Commission website here in town could use some enhancement, and maybe a link to like what Councilwoman Neff was talking about is another town's kind of the documented 10 nicest trees, and you could go down Grange or Hance or somewhere on Woodland Drive or something like that and find a large specimen tree, and it's something that that the town seems proud of. So an idea to consider if we want to. I think the other thing on the website, but total non sequitur, but like a list of suggested trees to plant is the other thing I always want to put out on the website. But anyway, Kristen, if you would like to work on the big tree hunt, I think there's a lot of room here to kind of work with these social media, the website, or things like that to improve. Thank you for volunteering for that. Any other questions, comments, concerns about the big tree hunt? Okay, I have some updates from Mr. Brooks. You will not see the Davy Tree Company in town anymore. The JCP&L project is complete. I think that their results were, it was effective, but I think a lot of butchery done on certain parts of town. So I know that Bill is also very vocal with the people who he doesn't think are good crews. So I appreciate his efforts there. In 2022. The JCP&L work that is planned is for the high wire, the transmission line on Ridge Road. That's the 34,500 volt transmission line that goes to the substation kind of near Fairhaven Fields. I don't think we have a lot of work to do, but maybe there's part near the bird sanctuary that could be expected to be trimmed. But that's going to be done by Aspen Tree, not Davy. And Bill tells me that's the gold standard around here for tree work. So I was happy to hear the next crew will be meeting his approval. So that was the updates from Bill as far as townwide projects. So that is pretty much it. Any questions on that? Great. So any other comments or concerns about any of the projects that we've updated here in the past 40 minutes or so?
Chairman, I wanted to ask you a question. I might have missed it, but I was very interested in the status of the community forestry plan. And I heard you speak about accreditation. Is that related to the accreditation?
The community forestry plan, we have a 5-year plan. And in the middle of COVID, it was extended, I believe, out into 2024, 23, 24, something like that. Christy might know, but we have a 5-year plan. There is something else, like community forestry plan might be a little bit more of a written document that addresses our tree resource, the inventory that we're planning to have, the efforts that we make to maintain. I think a lot of that stuff is probably due for an update. But I do know that accreditation, we have met all of our, we've cleared all the hurdles for New Jersey urban and community forestry accreditation, which is the Rutgers group, and then the Tree City USA, which is the Arbor Day Foundation accreditation. So within all that, Tracy, there is some plan that is presented. I don't believe it is the community forestry management plan. I don't know if we have something as formal as that, but there are, like I said, there's a 5-year plan that kind of addresses a lot of the same ideas.
Well, maybe we should understand the difference, because there is or maybe it is the same thing, but I've got here in front of me the community forestry management plan, an action plan for community forestry, and it was a 5-year plan, and maybe this is the same one you're talking about that was extended.
Yeah, it could be.
Because it sunsetted
Might
in
be.
2019. I
Yep.
just want to make sure that at council, we do our part in making sure this document and this plan are still living and functioning, because I think it is part of our accreditation, but
I can tell you that our 5-year plan is still living, because it was, 2019, it was carried forward for 5 years. And that's, that was the NJUCF folks that approved that.
okay, good.
So, but determining the difference between the community forestry plan and the 5-year plan would be probably a healthy thing to do.
Are you suggesting, Councilwoman Cole, that we should review it in light of changes that we might want to make to maybe have a different perspective on some of the items in the plan?
Yeah, when I knew that this was going to be my assignment, I was very much, it seemed like there were a lot of things in the air within the ordinance being written, this sort of broad public support for better canopy and tree management, and this plan that I looked at, which I didn't know that it had been extended. So I thought that had sunsetted. It just felt like there was a lot to tighten up and perfect, and then reinstitute in some formal way so that it becomes law, and that there's a good planning foundation in place for all your future actions that Shade Tree Commission may want to do. So yes, that was what I was thinking. And maybe we do need, it would probably be a good idea to take a look at it if you haven't recently.
I agreed. I think that those things are supposed to be kind of living documents, and if you go through some of the kind of the training, the core training, they always say things like, well, the best time to update your 5-year plan is today, and it's, even if you got 5 years to go for the next version. Let's follow up on that the next meeting. We'll add that to the agenda as far as, once we get our accreditation submissions in, it might be worth updating the 5-year plan, and that could be the community forestry plan.
Okay.
Say hi, Declan. You're on record, you're recorded.
Because we are reviewing the ordinance, and I think there's a lot of public feedback with, the view that we really ought to protect the canopy. And I think in the recent discussions this past year, it seems to me like the Shade Tree Commission is really going to emphasize planting and replanting areas of the canopy that we've had maybe weakened in town. And it seems that it makes total sense to me that we would look at the plan and perhaps revise it to reflect some of those newer perspectives of how we're looking at some of the items we've been discussing.
Agreed.
Peter, can I ask you to take that project as a, something that for next meeting, we'll get our accreditation sorted out, but then the following meeting, we want to maybe have a conversation about how to update the 5-year plan.
Sure. Yeah, I'll look at that. I'll
Do you have-
follow
do you
up with you. I'll maybe check in with you just to get caught up on that.
Okay.
Or is there somebody better to?
No, you know what? I might ask you and Chris Larson to collaborate on that.
Great.
Christy, if you could pass that along to Mr. Larson,
Will do.
former Secretary Larson. Okay. All right, guys, I think what we should do is probably, in the interest of time, 8:30, let's get over to the public participation. Let me just close my door again real quick.
If you'd like to participate via public comment, please raise your hand in the Zoom feature and I'll let you in.
Just one thing before we get to public participation, Arbor Day is coming up in 3 months. It's Friday, April 29th. We always do an Arbor Day celebration, and I'll be updating everybody on what we'll do at hopefully the next meeting. We kind of have done the same thing for the past few years, and I think it's worked well. We were waylaid a little bit by COVID the past 2 years, but hopefully we'll get past that, knock on wood.
Yeah, and I know that last year we were able to meet our, we had the Arbor Day proclamation at the council level signed by the mayor. So I know that was one of the things that the town has to do to support us for Arbor Day. So yeah, like you said, next month, let's make sure that's on the agenda.
Sure, I'll add that.
Thanks.
Anything else?
Anything else from the shade tree before we bring in some of our public?
I'm gonna bring in Bonnie Torsivia. You're in, Bonnie.
Okay, hi, can you hear me?
Hey, Bonnie, we can hear you.
Hi, I'll be quick, Dave, don't worry. I just wanted to, I have been looking at the tree ordinances because I'm working with the Green Team and trying to get those points, which also led me to look for that at our community, municipal community forestry management plan, which I'm glad to hear was extended because I think that's a key component in getting these points that has to be operational. But I think I don't see any evidence of that anywhere. Like we have to show officially that that was done to get sustainable Jersey points. And if it was just kind of pushed through, I mean, it does need some revision, I think. I mean, it's obviously they spent a lot of time and money doing it back in 2014. I mean, it's interesting because they talk about the canopy cover, Jill, instead of like counting the trees, it looks like, I don't know how they did this, if it was an aerial canopy cover, and they talk about trying to increase it from 45% to 50% by planting 40 trees a year. I don't know if that's been done or, but anyway, it seems a lot easier to kind of judge the canopy, particularly in the Fairhaven Fields, like you were saying, than to count all the trees.
Yeah, it definitely is. But the idea of doing the inventory was so that you could actually have a record of how to maintain the trees. And in order to apply for a lot of other grants, which would include grants for tree planting, the town has to have an inventory, which needs to be done at the ground level. So that's kind of how that's got going. But you're right, a canopy is much easier to do, and there's a lot of software to do that as well. And it's very simple to estimate, but unfortunately the inventory has to be done at the ground level.
We had talked as using the canopy, like a percentage cover as a goal, a metric, like a KPI that we could use. Like if we are currently at 55% canopy, why can't we get to 65% as a measuring tool? But that was, going back a year, we were talking about that, and we didn't really know how to actually do that. And that was kind of one of the first conversations that we had about like, well, why can't we be more of a tree planting commission as opposed to kind of fielding complaints about the tree resource commission. So that's.
Do you have a record of how many trees have been planted in the last, say, 5 years, every year? Do we have that anywhere? For the sustainable Jersey, I mean, like a record. I mean, this set a goal of 40 trees a year being planted back in 2014. I kind of thinking that might not have been accomplished, but.
I don't
I
think,
would,
Bonnie,
we
I
would
don't,
have a record of what was suggested, like what someone applies for a permit, a letter goes back to that person, resident, homeowner, you know, stating this is approved. You may plant X, Y, Z in place, X number. So we would have that information at town hall.
You're talking about for individuals, for residents or for
Yes,
public? Okay, but what about like,
anyone who applied for a permit.
but what about public planting of trees? Like say, I know there's some new ones in relatively new in McCarter Park. I just wondered like if I don't know how many trees have been planted by the Shade Tree Commissioner under the, I don't know who's even really in charge of it, of instigating.
it's a little bit, I mean, I also, there is also, Bonnie, the natural fields, because I know the natural fields area has been planting trees, and then remember there was the Girl Scouts who planted a dozen trees there to add to it further, but I know that they had already planted. But I think it is a good point that it sounds like we may not have an inventory of how the plantings we're doing per year. So that sounds like that's something we should do. And maybe that's something that we can put on paper. And it can be part of our, and having a tree inventory from grounds will help us with that as well. Part of the issue, Bonnie, is that there is not enough funding to do it. And part of it is because I think, and that's what back to the tree ordinance that we have just discussed. One of the ways that we're looking into it is we want to make sure if something goes down, a tree goes down, that the fees paid for it are able to help the Shade Tree Commission be able to afford another tree being planted. There's also a mismatch with the fees, and that's what we are trying. One of the issues we're trying to address, so that the funding is adequate, either through fees or through applications for grants, so that we are actually able to plant these trees. But for the Sustainable Jersey purposes, as long as as everything is up to date, they're not going to be checking whether or not we planted 40 trees a year. Sustainable Jersey is not going to be doing that kind of questioning, so that's not going to be relevant for the specific to the Sustainable Jersey application. But it is a relevant question that you're raising, in the sense that if we don't have an easy way to get to that number, we should know what it is annually. And we should make sure we have the funding for it.
Well, I also, to add to that, I think like going back to how, this software potentially could help is like, is 40 even the correct number? Like, so if we do an inventory of Fairhaven Fields and in that space, you can identify, all right, these trees are in this acreage. And really, realistically, how many more trees can you fit there where they will thrive? And so you could actually then mark planting spots and have a plan of saying, okay, in 2023, we're going to plant these 5 trees or these 10 trees, and 24, it's going to be in these plots. And it seems like you could have this well thought out 5-year, 10-year plan that is easy to maintain and just very easy for anybody to understand. I think so in this whole thing where we were trying to get this inventory going so that we could actually go for grants. I think long term it's going to be an excellent tool for the commission, for the town, for interested citizens to kind of see what's going on in terms of maintaining the trees and maintaining the canopy. So I think it could get very specific, I guess is my point.
Yeah, and I think it will require knocking on doors. I mean, we, to your point, we cannot stuff all the trees in the natural area. I think one of the things we've been talking about in trying to make the Shade Tree Commission, commission that will have trees planted, is literally knocking on doors. Let's go to River Oaks, where I think a lot of the trees have come down because of construction, and let's find out if there are some homeowners that are interested in planting something in their front yard, and whether we can buy it in bulk, and somehow have some kind of collaboration with individual homeowners in which we actually make this a community project. And maybe that's one way to address, where do we put the 40 trees? or however many trees we think are necessary. So it really requires a little bit of thinking, and hopefully this year is where we can put effort on that. But in my mind, at least, I think the way to do it is approaching the community directly. And I suspect some people may actually be pretty excited about it. If you're putting a tree in front of your house and your neighbor is doing the same and the one next to you is doing the same, could turn out to be a really neat effort.
Gets tree sponsors. You never know.
So,
just,
one thing I'll add is that we had a tree giveaway last year and we did get 4 or 5 submissions. So there is appetite from the townspeople. We just need to kind of market it better. We had to pick one winner and we wanted to try to prove the concept, and those trees will go in the ground in March. We just need to, make sure that that's followed up on. But yeah, I mean, if we get 5 respondents, maybe next year we have 5 recipients of trees, right? Or 10. So yeah, there's got to be, all these things are kind of culminating in the fact that we are going to be more proactive tree commission here. And the goal that the mayor wants to pursue is that we're net positive every year on the amount of trees that we plant. So, or trees in town. So that I appreciate.
I love it that you're going to have a more important role. I think you deserve it. And I think you're all working very hard. Yeah. And I just wanted to real quickly tell you that those big trees that I had Joe Bennett come, the fellow from the Forest Service, come in December. Basically, we found a white oak that was 320 years old, a beech tree that was 300 years old, and an elm, which is in Kelly Flanagan, the head of the Green Team's front yard, which is right between her house and the next door neighbor, an elm that is close to 200 years old, which he said was highly unusual. Never seen a tree wedged in like that. But so it's, I mean, there's some really magnificent trees. And if you go on the Madison website and just, on their Shade Tree Commission, I mean, that it's a beautiful page. They have all these whole different, selection of trees that it's really nice. I mean, it's a great website too. So I highly recommend you check it out. So anyway.
Kristen, you hear that? Madison, New Jersey. Check that one out. Bonnie, one follow-up. If you go to the New Jersey, what is it, the NJ UCF Google NJ UCF accreditation, you'll be taken to a website maintained by the DEP for the New Jersey Forest Service, and there's accreditation status kind of halfway down the page. You can see the 2021 accreditation status. If you scroll through, find Fairhaven Borough, you'll see our most recent plan expires December 31st of 2024. So this page, that should give any sort of proof you need. The new NJUCF accredited button says no, and that's because we have until February 15th to get our submission in to certify for 2021, and that will happen in the next couple of weeks.
So this is, I think I'm confused. Is this the actual community forestry management plan? Are we talking about the same thing?
Well, I think that's what we're trying to determine, if the community forestry management plan is a 5-year plan. I don't know.
I don't know that it, yeah, I'm not sure. I think this community forestry management plan is what they designate as this 5-year, this is what the document I have from Fairhaven that expired in 2019.
No, the 5-year plan was extended till 2024. So if that is the same thing, then we do have one, because the 5-year plan, which was set to expire, was extended during COVID.
Okay. Oh, okay. So they'll, okay.
So it should be the same thing, but again, I don't want to say definitively, but I believe it is the same thing.
You know what? I'll volunteer to tack that down too.
Thank you, Tracy. Appreciate it.
I just wanted to offer one little thing, because I've been with Bonnie on some of the tree measuring expeditions, and I have to say they make great social media posts, because as long as the property owner is agreeable, it's just an amazing thing to watch, these 300-year-old trees, and it's just only a couple facts, and you can photograph it so it doesn't feature the address or the home, if somebody wants their privacy, but they make great posts. It's food for thought.
I would,
For sure. Yeah.
I would be happy to go take photos and knock on the door and ask if I could get the locations of said trees. That would be helpful.
Well, if Bonnie, you have a measuring, I know you are going to have some measuring done in the coming weeks. Maybe Leah could join you, or as you've documented, you could send it to Leah.
Will do. I do have one one owner was reluctant to have people drive up his driveway and look at his huge oak, but so the other ones I think are okay.
That's good. That's important information.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Bonnie. Anything else? Anything further?
Nope. I mean, I'm thrilled you're redoing the ordinance, Mike. And I would say maybe look past Rumson. I don't know that Rumson's is that super impressive. I think there are a lot of other great ones. I know I sent you one, Dave, the Madison, the Florham Park. They're. I mean, again, I've been looking at this for another project I'm working on, so I've been kind of looking around at them. And I think that if you make a statement in the beginning of ours saying why we treasure our trees and how important they are, and I mean, the whole thing with climate change and the cooling factor and the stormwater management, that all should be incorporated into why we are trying to save these trees. I think people are finally realizing that they're way more than just pretty things to look at or something to worry about the branch falling off of. I mean, they really are. If you walk down Hance under that canopy, it's cooler than, a street without. So anyway.
Thank you,
thanks.
Bonnie. Bonnie, I'll look into those ordinances. Thank you.
Sorry, Dave, I wasn't short. Sorry.
Nope, I appreciate it. As always, I appreciate your continued support here. So keep up the good work, Bonnie. Thank you. I see one other hand raised from the public.
Yep, Stephanie Rapp, I'm gonna let you in.
All right, Stephanie, thanks for joining us. Go ahead and unmute and go ahead.
Hi, Stephanie Adams Rapp, 230 Oxford, fellow Bonnie on the Bonnie on the Green Team. I just had a couple of quick comments or suggestions on the ordinance, on the tree ordinance. Tracy, I love that idea. I love the idea of, I was always thinking in terms of carbon credits, right? Credits. So if you can't replant the tree, you have to pay the credit somewhere else. And I know that it's important that we treat homeowners and builders equitably. So as far as fees go, you have to be mindful of that. Could a fee structure be done on some sort of a sliding scale whereby if you are removing 1 to 2 trees, like if you're a homeowner, I would argue that a homeowner is less likely to take down multiple trees. So could you set your fees on a sliding scale based on how many trees the applicant is taking down? So if you're taking down 1 to 2 trees, it's this much per tree. If you're taking down 5 to 10, is that, I don't know if that's fair or nice, but that might be one way to kind of address, we want to disincentivize builders from taking down too many trees, but we don't want to penalize homeowners, right? Who have to take 1 or 2 down. So
yeah, Stephanie, what you're alluding to is clear cutting, and absolutely, yes, we do. There are fee schedules related to the number of trees being removed. Yes.
Okay. So that would also apply to this credit, or I'm sorry, Tracy, I don't remember the term. Banking.
I use the word tree bank because we think about it as banking trees for future planting.
Okay, awesome. My other comment was on the 3rd Street lot. David, I think you mentioned that you might be reaching out to the Board of Ed on the line of trees for, and so I don't know if you've spoken to David Joy, the business administrator.
Not yet, but I know he's the contact.
Yeah, because I've been talking to him just about, I've been the liaison for the green team, the school's green team, and we did have a couple conversations, and I know that they are concerned. They were talking about maybe hiring a consultant to figure out how to, manage the issue. So if you haven't, they're definitely interested. And I think I had actually mentioned that, they should be talking to you guys. So I would encourage you to reach out to Dave Joy. And then the third thing is, this is out in the future, but I just want to put it out there because I'll forget. Bonnie, I know I mentioned this to you earlier. The 2 trees at the By Hall site, Bicentennial Hall, which is slated for some renovations and an ADA well, they're putting in a new parking lot to include ADA spots in accordance with an ADA grant. And we, on the green team, we've just been concerned about those two, there are two big trees there at the front of the lot. So I just kind of wanted to put it on, you know, our radar that we're just keeping an eye on that, because it's unclear. I've stared at the site several times. It's unclear how they're gonna, you know, we were assured that the trees wouldn't be coming down, but I don't know how they're gonna manage to put the parking lot in. So again, you know, in the spirit of collaboration and just trying to get folks to talk to each other about these different projects, I just kind of wanted to mention that and put it on your radar, that we're keeping an eye on those trees. And that's it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Rapp. So if the green team is keeping an eye on the Bicentennial Hall project, I'm not super aware of what the plans are there.
So
Councilwoman F, would you mind being able to follow up on that? Is there something that we need to do as a Shade Tree Commission on those trees? Or I'm assuming that
I don't
any
know.
plans have proposals that are already approved and, you know, the tree experts already involved, right?
I can definitely make a few comments. The Bicentennial Hall plans are not finalized. They're still gonna go through final council approval. Some of the discussions right now are around the inside and what the inside is going to look like. But the reason why a parking lot was decided to be put in there is because it needed to be, we have to provide a way for you know, people to be able to park there if they have ADA needs. There's going to be a ramp built to get into the buildings in case somebody has a wheelchair. And the view right now is that we may have our council meetings there in the future, as well as other meetings. That might actually be at the venue rather than the downstairs at the current Borough Hall. So that's some of the thinking behind that parking lot. Now, we will have to watch, assuming the plans go forward, and I'm not going to say they will until it's voted by the council, but if they do go forward, we have gotten assurances that those two trees, that those big trees in front of Bicentennial Hall will be saved. And I am sure that everything will be done around that to make sure that they are protected. So that is the plan, but nothing has been voted on, nothing is final. So I'm not sure if there's anything for you to do, David, but it's good for you to know, because that's something that the green team has inquired about and received assurances that the trees will be protected.
Okay.
I would like to suggest that we do, because I agree with everything Lelani Councilwoman F just said. But I think it would help to have a simple letter that I know that there was a right of access form that I was involved with, that those trees are going to be measured. And some of them will probably have some sort of heritage status. And I think getting that documented will just help ensure that the right thing happens there. And I think you're hearing, at least from myself and Councilwoman F, that, you know, we would want to see the right thing happen there. And the trees should have a right to stay. And even if there does need to be a curb cut or some sort of access provided, steps should be taken to work around it. Not so sure the parking lot is more important than the trees, truthfully. So, but it's something, a simple letter just stating, you know, the status of what's happening and that those trees have a priority as far as the Shade Tree Commission is concerned. Can only help.
Can I just add one thing? Sorry, it's Bonnie again. Christy has sent me the right of access to that tree at Bicentennial Hall, and that we had signed off. That was what you were involved with. And the reason being is it's the Liberty tree. There's a plaque in front of it that was planted in 1976 in honor of our bicentennial. I mean, it's kind of a significant tree. So it's 45 years old. I mean, you assume it was probably 10 years old when it was planted, so it's over 50 years old. I mean, I don't think it should be just cut down without, I mean, I don't know. I think it's
no,
kind
that's
of an important tree in Fairhaven.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's why I wanted to get it measured. So
no, and I think getting it measured and having it added to a state forestry registry, I think, is a really good way to preserve old trees. So I will. I hear you, Tracy, Councilwoman Cole, as far as a letter to council, I think that would be a fairly simple thing to do, and I will commit to that. And so just to kind of make sure that the council's aware, the Shade Tree Commission has that kind of like, I was keeping an eye on that project, so to speak. So,
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, no, all very good points. Yeah, thank you for that. And yeah, the rights of access was the thing that was jogging my memory about the Bicentennial Hall. I couldn't remember what I was recently had seen about that. So, okay, thank you for running, and thank you, Bonnie, for pointing out that this is the Liberty Tree. All right, guys, we're approaching 90 minutes here. In the interest of time, I want to just see if there's any further comments from the public.
Anyone else?
I mean, I see the 2 hands raised of people who have already spoken. Are you still interested in speaking? Because I can't really, I don't think those hands ever came down.
Oh. No.
No from Ms. Rapp, no from Ms. Torsivia. All right, guys, any questions, comments, concerns, final comments from anybody on the commission?
Oh, the last thing I'd say is, as far as the number of trees that we were planning getting over the 40, Mike, how many trees were we giving away when we were doing the seedling thing? I mean, we were doing what, 100 trees or more?
Yeah, we're given 200 trees by the state every year, and that was from 2014 until about 2018. And we gave away, I would say, well over 100 each year. Now, if they survived, I'm not sure, because they were seedlings and saplings. But yes, we did have a significant tree giveaway as part of our Arbor Day celebration from 2014 to 2018 or so.
I just didn't know that I'm sure that would have covered our requirements for that.
Yeah. Good point, Chris. Thank you. All right, guys. Any a lot of good takeaways here, a lot of good discussion. Any final comments or thoughts?
I just want to offer to work with you, Chris, on the firewood idea. I might be able to facilitate that a little bit.
That's great. Thank you.
Mhm.
I actually just wanted to mention that I'm really excited to work with this group. I think since last year and now this discussion this month, we have some great things on the agenda, really great things. And things that I think, especially with the help of the social media, will really help people become aware that there is a Shade Tree Commission, and we're doing all these things. So I just wanted to say thank you for your time.
Yeah, a lot of momentum here. Great job, everyone. All right, all. I think we could probably adjourn at this point unless there's any final comments.
Motion
Somebody
to
wanna-
adjourn.
Thank you, Dr. Mike. I will second that. All right, guys, great meeting. Happy New Year to everybody. Thank you all for your hard work, and keep it up. We'll speak again next month, and we're going to keep it on Zoom. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
Here, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, all.